Poor twins beg Billionaire to trade their shoes for bread. The truth broke their heart. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The aroma of freshly baked pastries filled Harrington's bakery, mingling with the scent of gourmet coffee and hints of vanilla. Ethan Reynolds straightened his Italian silk tie while waiting in line, glancing at his platinum watch. Another day, another meeting, another multi-million-dollar acquisition to close before lunch. The usual, Mr. Reynolds? Asked the attendant, with a practiced smile. Ethan nodded without making eye contact, his attention fixed on his smartphone. The bakery was his single daily indulgence, located far from his office tower in the financial district. It wasn't the taste that drew him, food was merely fuel. What he appreciated was the exclusive atmosphere, the select clientele, the comfort of the familiar. "Your almond croissant and espresso, sir," the attendant said, placing the tray on the marble counter. It was then that the little bell above the door chimed, letting in a rush of October air. Ethan wouldn't have noticed if not for the sudden silence that fell over the place. He turned instinctively. Two small girls, perhaps 6 years old, entered timidly. They were identical twins, with tangled blonde hair framing delicate faces. Their matching dresses, once pink, showed obvious signs of dirt and wear. They surveyed the surroundings with large, alert eyes, looking even smaller beneath the elegant chandeliers. The customers exchanged uneasy glances. The manager moved quickly toward the little intruders, but one of the girls was faster. Before anyone could intercept her, she walked straight up to Ethan. "Sir." Her voice was clear with a slight accent he couldn't place. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan felt the manager's gaze silently asking permission to intervene. He hesitated, intrigued by the confidence in the child's eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, more harshly than intended. The girl didn't back away. Instead, she held out something in her small hands and offered it to him. It was a worn child's shoe, its laces nearly disintegrated. "Can we trade shoes for bread?" she asked with neither embarrassment nor shame. "My sister Violet is really hungry. We're both hungry." Time seemed to freeze. Ethan felt the weight of all eyes on him, some curious, some visibly uncomfortable, with the scene. "Where are your parents?" he asked, bending down slightly. "Daddy went away," the girl replied with a simplicity that made the tragedy even more painful. "But I take care of Violet, and she takes care of me." Ethan felt something strange in his chest, a forgotten sensation. The twins' eyes, blue like a summer sky, held a surprising mix of vulnerability and strength. Here were children offering their last valuable possession for food. "What's your names?" he asked, his voice softer now. "I'm Lily," she replied, still holding out the worn shoe. "That's Violet." She nodded toward her twin, who stood near the door, watching cautiously. Sudden flash crossed Ethan's mind. A woman's face, a smile, a promise made long ago. "You know this shoe isn't worth much," he said, trying to sound practical, trying to ignore the tightness in his throat. "It's the last one that fits me right," Lily explained with a child's unwavering logic. "There's a drawing inside, see?" She turned the shoe to reveal a small sun drawn on the insole, almost erased by wear. That was when Ethan realized his own handcrafted Italian loafers had cost more than many families spent on food in a month. "The manager is going to call security," the attendant whispered, leaning discreetly toward him. Ethan felt a sudden impulse. "How much bread do you need?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Just enough for us to share. Violet is small but gets really hungry." He pulled out his wallet and took out several high-value bills. "Give me a bag of assorted bread," he instructed the attendant, "and add some of those chocolate pastries too." When the bag was handed over, he gave it to Lily, whose expression flickered between distrust and gratitude. "Thank you, sir." She clutched the bag to her chest as though it were treasure. "Are you sure you don't want the shoe?" "I'm sure," he replied. "Go feed your sister." Lily nodded solemnly and walked toward Violet with impressive dignity for someone so small. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "God bless you," she said, words clearly borrowed from an older person. before disappearing through the door with her sister. The ambient hum of the bakery gradually returned. Ethan picked up his now lukewarm coffee and barely touched croissant. He realized he could no longer taste it. "What a sad situation," commented an older woman at the next table. "Those street children. The city should do something." Ethan nodded mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. A memory of himself not much older than the twins, holding his mother's hand as they counted coins to buy bread. Finishing his coffee quickly, he stepped out into the cool morning air. He had an important meeting. The market waited for no one. But with every step toward his waiting car, the heaviness in his chest seemed to grow. For the first time in years, something had penetrated the carefully constructed walls around his heart. Two small blonde girls with worn-out shoes and eyes too old for their age. Ethan walked into his office at Reynolds Enterprises, the company he'd built from nothing into a global powerhouse. From his penthouse view, the city spread before him like a chessboard on which he'd strategically conquered each piece. "Mr. Reynolds, the merger documents need your signature," said his secretary, placing a folder on his glass desk. He signed quickly, but the blue eyes of those twin girls haunted him. Their faces had awakened something long dormant, the memory of his own childhood poverty after his mother died, leaving him to navigate the treacherous foster care system alone. "Cancel my afternoon appointments," he said suddenly. His secretary stared, confused. "Sir, you have a video conference with Tokyo at 4. "Reschedule everything," Ethan replied, already grabbing his coat. In the elevator, he closed his eyes. Why? Couldn't he simply ignore those children as he'd ignored countless panhandlers over the years? His car waited at the building entrance. "Take me back to Harrington's bakery," he instructed his driver. Inside the bakery, Ethan scanned for the blonde twins, finding no trace of them. "That girl?" he asked the attendant. "The twins from this morning, did they come back?" "No, sir. The manager said she'd call security if they appear again." "Which way did you see them go?" "Toward the park, I think." Ethan moved quickly in that direction, turning onto less maintained streets where the city showed its rougher edge. No one seemed to have seen the girls, or if they had, they preferred not to get involved. After an hour of fruitless searching, Ethan stopped at a corner. What was he doing? There were agencies for homeless children, yet something stopped him from calling. The girls had said they were taking care of each other. Reporting them might mean separation. He called the private investigator he sometimes used for business background checks. "I need to find someone," he said abruptly. Two children, identical twins named Lily and Violet, about 6 years old, possibly homeless. "With homeless kids, it can be tricky," the investigator warned. "I'll need a few days." "You have until tomorrow morning," Ethan replied. "Money is no issue." That evening, his dinner went untouched. Eleanor, his housekeeper of 20 years, noticed immediately. "Did something happen today?" she asked, concerned. Ethan almost told her about the twins, about how their eyes reminded him of someone, about how their simple request had cracked something inside him. "Just tired," he said instead. In his study, he opened a small wooden box he rarely revisited. Inside was an old photograph, a young blonde woman holding a baby. On the back, a single line, "Ethan and Mom, 1982. Beside the photo was a small worn baby shoe. His first, the only one his mother had preserved before poverty forced them to give up almost everything. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was the investigator. "I found them, Mr. Reynolds. Witnesses saw the twins in an abandoned lot near the old train station. There's a small group of homeless people sheltering there." Ethan felt his heart quicken. "I'll be there first thing in the morning." That night he stared at the ceiling, sleepless. Tomorrow he would find Lily and Violet. But then what? What would he do with two homeless children? He had no answers, only the certainty that he could no longer pretend he hadn't seen them. Morning came under a threatening sky. Ethan dismissed his driver and drove himself to the abandoned train station, once a symbol of progress, now surrounded by rusty fences and faded signs. A yellowed billboard advertised a future real estate venture that had never materialized. He parked his luxury car at a distance, not to avoid scratches, but to avoid frightening those he sought. The investigator waited on a corner, an unremarkable man with keen eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds." "This way." Ethan followed him through a gap in the fence. The lot was filled with debris, weeds, and occasional abandoned belongings. Improvised shelters of tarp and cardboard formed a small camp, beneath what was once the main platform. "They're over there," the investigator pointed discreetly. Beneath a tattered blanket, two small figures slept curled against each other. Lily lay protectively around her sister, even in sleep, maintaining her role as guardian. "Are there more people around?" Ethan asked, noting the quiet stillness. "Most leave early to beg or look for work. The kids usually stay behind." Ethan approached slowly. Lily was the first to wake, her alert blue eyes instantly open. She pulled her sister closer instinctively. "Hello, Lily," Ethan said, stopping a few steps away. The girl studied him warily before recognition lit her face. "Hi, you're the bread man from the bakery." Violet opened her sleepy eyes, identical to her sister's but larger, taking up more of her small, thin face. "How did you find us?" Lily asked, now standing protectively in front of Violet. "I asked around," Ethan replied simply. "Did you eat last night?" Lily hesitated. "We saved some bread for today." "I'm hungry," Violet murmured, her voice small from disuse. Ethan looked around at their precarious conditions. An empty bakery bag was neatly folded next to them along with two plastic bottles half full of water. "I know a place that serves pancakes," he said. "Do you like pancakes?" Violet's eyes widened, but Lily remained cautious. "Why are you doing this?" The question caught Ethan off guard. Why indeed? He himself wasn't sure. "Because no one should go hungry," he finally said. "Especially children." Lily studied his face for a long moment, searching for deception. Finally, she nodded. "We need to take our stuff." Stuff was an exaggeration for the small bundle she quickly assembled. A tattered blanket, a one-eyed teddy bear, a few clothing pieces, and a broken picture frame. In the car, the twins sat in the back seat, tense and silent. "You need to put on your seatbelts," Ethan said. Lily helped her sister before fastening her own, moving with the sad familiarity of adult responsibilities. At the restaurant, a family spot where they wouldn't draw too many stares, the waitress led them to a corner table. "You can order whatever you want," Ethan said. "Can I have all that?" Violet asked, pointing to a stack of pancakes with wide eyes. "Violet," Lily scolded gently. "Don't be greedy." "It's all right," Ethan assured. "Order whatever you want." Violet grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. It transformed her from a wary child into a normal 6-year-old. While they waited, Ethan tried conversation. "Have you been staying in that place long?" "Just a few weeks," Lily replied cautiously. "Before that, we stayed at the park, but it got too cold." "And before the park?" Ethan asked gently. Lily lowered her eyes. "We used to have a home." The pancakes arrived, stacked high with syrup and berries. Violet attacked her plate enthusiastically, while Lily ate more slowly, savoring every bite. "You don't have to eat so fast, Violet," she whispered. "No one's going to take your plate." Ethan recognized that behavior, the fear that food would disappear before hunger was satisfied. "There will be more if you want," he said gently. Lily looked up. "Why are you being nice to us?" Ethan considered the question. "Hasn't anyone been nice to you before?" The girl's expression darkened. "Some people pretend to be nice at first." The implication hung heavy between them. Ethan felt a mix of anger and sadness. "I'm not pretending, Lily. Everybody wants something," she replied with a bitterness far too mature for her 6 years. "What happened to your parents?" Ethan asked, changing the subject. Lily paused her eating, her eyes losing focus. "Mom got sick. Dad tried to take care of her, but there wasn't enough money for medicine. He worked all the time, but it wasn't enough. Mom went to heaven." Violet interrupted, her mouth sticky with syrup. Lily nodded sadly. After that, Dad changed. He started drinking that stuff that makes people act weird. Alcohol. Ethan muttered. Yeah, he lost his job, then our house. He promised he'd come get us when he found a new place, but... Her voice faltered. How long? Ethan asked gently. Lily shrugged. Lots of days. I can't count very well yet. Do you have other relatives? Uncles? Grandparents? We had Grandma, but she went to heaven too, Lily replied. Dad said it was just the four of us against the world. The simplicity of her answer masked a complex tragedy. Ethan could imagine their father, desperate after losing his wife, succumbing to alcohol, losing everything, perhaps with the best intentions of returning for his daughters but never finding his way back. Do you have kids? Lily asked suddenly. No, Ethan answered, surprised by the question. Why not? You seem old enough. Ethan couldn't help a small smile at her bluntness. I never found the time, I guess. Or the right person. Our mom used to say kids are gifts, Lily said. But I guess some people don't like gifts. The observation hit harder than he expected. How many times had he avoided serious relationships, citing his career as the priority? Are you finished? He asked, noticing their empty plates. Violet nodded eagerly. Can we eat more? Sure, Ethan said, signaling the waitress. And maybe afterward. We can get you some new clothes. Lily's eyes widened. New clothes? And a warm bath, Ethan added. If you want. You won't take us to the police after? She asked cautiously. Not unless you want me to. We don't, Lily said quickly. They'll separate us. I promised Mom I'd always take care of Violet. Ethan nodded, understanding. No one will separate you. After their second helping of pancakes, Ethan took them to a department store. The sales clerk looked suspiciously at the disheveled twins, but her professionalism held. Lily chose practical items: pants, t-shirts, a sturdy coat for Violet. Ethan added socks, underwear, and pajamas, as well as new shoes. We can really keep all this? Lily asked, looking smaller than ever behind the pile of bags. Yes, it's all yours, Ethan confirmed. In the car, Violet fell asleep immediately, exhausted by the emotional morning and with a full belly. Lily fought to keep her eyes open. Where are we going now? She asked drowsily. Ethan hesitated. He hadn't planned beyond this point. Taking them to a hotel seemed impersonal, and returning them to the street was unthinkable. We're going to my house, he decided. You can take a bath, rest, and then we'll figure out what's next. Ethan's mansion was located on the outskirts of the city inside a gated community overlooking a lake. As the electronic gate opened, Lily woke up and nudged her sister. Violet, look, she exclaimed, pointing at the huge house with manicured gardens. Do you live in a castle? Asked Violet, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Ethan smiled. It's not a castle, just a house too big for one person. Eleanor was waiting at the door, her usually composed expression faltering at the sight of two grubby children, stepping out of her employer's car. Mr. Reynolds? She asked, confused. Eleanor, these are Lily and Violet, Ethan introduced. They'll be staying with us for a while. The housekeeper looked from the twins to Ethan, clearly expecting an explanation. When none came, she assumed her usual efficiency. Welcome, girls. Let's get you a warm bath, Eleanor said with practiced kindness. Lily gripped Violet's hand more tightly. Can we stay together? Eleanor smiled gently. Of course, dear. I'll show you where everything is. While Eleanor led the children upstairs, Ethan headed to his office, needing a moment to process his own actions. There was something impulsive, almost irrational about what he was doing. In less than 48 hours, he had brought two unknown children into his home. Eleanor returned an hour later, closing the office door behind her. They're bathing now. I put fresh towels and those new pajamas in the guest room down the east hall. Ethan nodded gratefully. Thank you, Eleanor. May I ask what's going on? She inquired, sitting in the chair across from his desk, a privilege only she was ever allowed. Ethan recounted everything: the meeting in the bakery, the search, the twins' story. Eleanor listened in silence, her face showing growing compassion. What do you plan to do with them? she asked, using his first name as she did only in moments of deep familiarity. I don't know, he admitted. I can't send them back to the street. Eleanor studied him carefully. There's something more, isn't there? Something about these particular children. Ethan hesitated. Eleanor had known him since his youth. She had witnessed his rise, his obsession with success, his gradual transformation into a man who measured everything in monetary value. They remind me of myself, he confessed. After my mother died, that feeling of being completely alone in the world. Eleanor nodded, understanding. I see it too, especially in Lily's eyes, that same determination you had. What should I do, Eleanor? It was a rare question coming from him, a man used to making decisions that affected thousands of lives without hesitation. Start by feeding them and giving them a safe place to sleep, she answered with practical simplicity. The rest will come naturally. When Ethan went upstairs, he found the twins transformed by the bath. Their blonde hair, now clean, shone like gold under the warm light. Both wore new pajamas that seemed too big for their thin frames. They sat on the king-sized bed, appearing tiny among the pillows. This bed is bigger than our whole house used to be, Lily commented, bouncing lightly on the mattress. Violet laughed, bouncing higher. It's soft like clouds. Ethan smiled, leaning against the doorframe. Did you like your bath? The water never got cold, Violet exclaimed with genuine wonder. The casual remark revealed so much about their former lives that Ethan felt his throat tighten. It'll never get cold here, he promised. Can we really sleep in this bed? Lily asked, still skeptical of their good fortune. Of course. This room is yours while you're here. The girl looked around, evaluating the luxurious space. How long are we going to stay? It was the question Ethan had been avoiding. How long would you like to stay? Lily glanced at her sister. Can we stay until tomorrow? You can stay longer than that, Ethan replied. But we'll talk about it later. You must be tired now. Violet was already yawning, her eyelids heavy. Lily helped her slide under the blankets, naturally assuming the role of caretaker. Can I talk to you a bit before I sleep? Ethan asked Lily. The girl hesitated, looking at Violet, who was almost asleep. Will she be okay alone? We'll leave the door open, and we'll be right there on the balcony. The guest room's balcony overlooked, the illuminated gardens and the lake in the distance. Lily curled up in a large chair, looking even smaller under the starry sky. Your house is really pretty, she commented. Thank you, Ethan replied, sitting beside her. But I didn't always live in a place like this. Lily looked at him curiously. Where did you live before? When I was about your age, I lived in a tiny apartment with my mom. Sometimes we didn't have enough money for food. The girl's eyes widened. You were poor like us? Yes, he confirmed. My mother got sick like yours, but I didn't have any siblings. When she died, I was left alone. Who took care of you? She asked softly. Nobody, really. I went to an orphanage, then to foster homes. Some were good, some not so good. You didn't have a dad? He left before I was born. Lily processed this, in silence. So how did you get rich? I worked hard, studied whenever I could, got lucky a few times, met people who helped me. Our mom said hard work always pays off, Lily observed. But Dad worked a lot and we still lost everything. The astute observation impressed him. Sometimes it's not fair, Lily. Some people work their whole lives and never get enough. Others get luckier. Were you lucky? Ethan considered his path. Sleepless nights, sacrifices, tough decisions, sometimes ruthless, that got him where he was. I was lucky at some key moments, he admitted. But I also made choices, some I regret now. 1 month had passed since the twins entered Ethan's life, a month that felt both like an eternity and the blink of an eye. The mansion, once impeccably neat, now showed signs of children everywhere. Drawings stuck to the refrigerator with colorful magnets, small shoes in the hallway, children's books on coffee tables. Ethan noticed these small changes with a mixture of fascination and nervousness. His home, like his life had always been organized, predictable, under control. Now there was chaos, noise, and a constant feeling of venturing into uncharted territory. "Mr. Reynolds," said Mrs. Harper during her weekly visit, "how are you adapting to everyday life with the children?" Ethan adjusted his tie, a nervous habit he'd never lost. "We're finding our rhythm." Mrs. Harper jotted something on her clipboard. "And what about spending quality time together?" "It's essential for building bonds." The question made him uncomfortable. He had provided everything the twins could materially need: clothes, toys, a complete makeover of their bedroom. But quality time between business meetings, video calls, and running his financial empire? He realized this aspect had largely been left to Eleanor. "I'll make a greater effort," he promised. After Mrs. Harper left, Ethan cleared his schedule for the rest of the week, unthinkable just 2 months prior, and began planning. If there was one thing Ethan Reynolds excelled at, it was executing plans. The next morning, he surprised the twins at breakfast. "Who wants to go to the zoo today?" Violet almost toppled off her chair in excitement. "Are there elephants there?" "Elephants. Tigers, giraffes," Ethan confirmed with a smile. "What about lions?" asked Lily, her eyes bright despite her attempt to seem uninterested. "Lions, too." Ethan nodded. "We'll go right after breakfast." Eleanor, clearing the plates, hid a satisfied smile. The day was perfect, sunny but not too hot. Ethan arranged for private access to certain zoo areas for privacy's sake, though he avoided mentioning this to keep it from seeming ostentatious. Violet ran from one enclosure to another, demanding to be lifted to see the animals if they were far away. Lily, calmer, read every information sign aloud, impressing Ethan with her advanced reading skills for her age. "Do you like books about animals?" he asked as they watched the monkeys. Lily nodded. "Mom had a big book with pictures. She taught me to read using it." It was rare for her to mention her mother spontaneously. Ethan saw it as a small victory. "We can buy more animal books, maybe even an encyclopedia." "What's an encyclod?" She struggled with the word. "Encyclopedia," he clarified. "It's a big book that explains everything about a topic, like a collection of many books in one." Her eyes grew wide. "I really want that." After the zoo, they stopped at a huge bookstore. Ethan watched as Lily wandered the aisles with reverence like she was in a temple. Violet quickly found the children's section and sat on the floor, flipping through picture books. "Can I have this one?" Lily asked, holding a large illustrated animal encyclopedia that she could barely carry. "Of course," Ethan replied. "And what else?" She looked puzzled. "I can choose more than one?" "As many as you like." Lily's expression wavered between disbelief and delight. Violet, overhearing, immediately piled up storybooks and dinosaur guides. When they left, each twin carried a bag full of new books. On the way back, Ethan noticed Lily gazing out the window thoughtfully. "What are you thinking about?" "Why are you doing all this for us?" she asked directly. The question caught him off guard. "Because I care about you both." "But why?" she insisted. "You barely know us." Ethan thought hard about his answer. Sometimes you just know when something is important, like finding the perfect book on a shelf. Lily seemed to accept that answer, turning back to the window. "Thanks for the books, really." Over the next few days, Ethan continued his mission to create meaningful moments. He took the twins to an aquarium, an amusement park, shopping for decorations so they could personalize their room. Violet always showed unbridled enthusiasm, but Ethan noticed that Lily seemed happiest in quieter moments, when he read to them at night, or when they simply watched a movie together. After a week of such outings, Ethan made a surprising discovery. He was genuinely having fun. It wasn't just duty or a way to impress the social worker. There was something profoundly satisfying in seeing the world through their eyes. Violet's awe at seeing an elephant for the first time. Lily's concentration when learning something new. For the first time in decades, Ethan Reynolds wasn't just going through the motions of life. He was living it. One night, while working in his office after the twins had gone to bed, Ethan heard a muffled scream. He ran to their room and found Lily sitting up in bed, clutching the blankets, breathing heavily. Violet remained asleep in the twin bed across the room, undisturbed by her sister's nightmare. "Lily, are you all right?" Ethan asked softly, not wanting to wake Violet. Lily blinked as if trying to separate dream from reality. "I'm fine," she muttered. "I just had a bad dream." Ethan moved closer and sat at the edge of her bed. "Do you want to talk about it?" She shook her head. It was just a silly dream. It was clearly a lie. Her eyes were still wide with fear, her small body tense. "Want me to stay here until you fall asleep again?" "No need," she replied quickly, lying down again and pulling the blanket up to her chin. "It's over. Good night." "Ethan." "Good night, Lily." He hesitated, not wanting to leave her alone but respecting her need for space. "I'll be in the hallway if you need me." Instead of returning to his office, Ethan lingered in the hallway, unsure. Moments later, Eleanor appeared wearing a robe over her pajamas. "I heard a scream," she explained. "Was it Lily?" Ethan nodded. "A nightmare, I think. But she doesn't want to talk about it." Eleanor gave him a reassuring smile. "Leave it to me." She knocked softly and entered the twins' room. Ethan stayed in the hallway, close enough to hear muffled voices but not the exact words. 20 minutes later, Eleanor came out, shutting the door quietly. "She's asleep now," she said. "What happened?" Ethan asked. "What was the nightmare about?" Eleanor hesitated. "It's not for me to say. She'll tell you when she's ready." The next morning, Lily seemed normal, though slightly shadowed by faint circles under her eyes. While Violet chatted excitedly about the day's plans during breakfast, she ate quietly. "I thought we could go for a picnic at the park," Ethan suggested. "It's a nice day." Violet applauded the idea, but Lily just shrugged. "Whatever." At the park, while Violet played on the playground under Eleanor's watchful eye, Ethan found Lily sitting alone on a bench, watching other parents with their children. "May I sit?" he asked. Lily scooted over, making room. They remained silent for a few minutes, observing the other families. "You know," Ethan began casually, "when I was little I had nightmares almost every night." Lily turned to him, surprised. "I dreamed I was in a dark place, calling for my mom, but she never answered," he continued. "It was after she died. I was really scared of being alone." "What did you do?" Lily asked softly. "Most times I just cried until I fell asleep again," Ethan admitted. "There was no one to comfort me in the orphanage, but then my first foster mom gave me a trick." "What trick?" "She gave me a tiny flashlight to keep under my pillow." Ethan smiled at the memory. "She said the light chased away nightmares. I'm not sure if it really worked, but I felt safer, like I had a secret power against the monsters." Lily looked down at her hands. "My nightmare doesn't have monsters." "No?" She shook her head. "It has Dad. He comes back and takes Violet away, but leaves me behind. Says he can only take one of us." Ethan felt his heart clench. "That won't happen, Lily." "How do you know?" Her blue eyes demanded honesty. "Because I won't let it," he said firmly. "You and Violet stay together no matter what." Lily considered his words. "Eleanor said you have fears too." "Everyone does," Ethan confirmed. "Even rich grown-ups?" Ethan smiled slightly. "Especially rich grown-ups." "What are you afraid of?" she asked, truly curious. The question made him pause. It was easy to talk about childhood fears, but his current fears, that felt like a dangerous vulnerability. Still, if he wanted Lily to trust him, he needed to offer the same trust. "I'm afraid of failing," he finally admitted. "Of not being good enough to take care of you two." Lily looked surprised by the confession. "You're already better than a lot of people," she said simply. "Thank you," Ethan replied, oddly touched by the sincere compliment. They fell silent again, but it was a different silence now. Comfortable. Shared. "Ethan," Lily said suddenly, "do you think our dad will ever come back?" The question was complicated. Ethan didn't want to give her false hope, but he also didn't want to destroy her image of her father. I don't know, Lily, he answered honestly. I wish I had a better answer. That's okay, she said, surprising him. I just wanted to know. That night after dinner, Ethan had a surprise ready. At bedtime, he brought the twins to their room where they were preparing for sleep. I have something for you two, he said, pulling out two small packages from his pocket. Lily and Violet opened them simultaneously. Inside each was a small pocket flashlight, purple for Lily and pink for Violet. To chase away nightmares, Ethan explained with a gentle smile. Violet immediately turned hers on, delighted by the beam dancing on the wall. Lily held hers carefully as if it were precious. Thank you, she said in a low voice. There's one more thing, Ethan continued, taking a walkie-talkie from his pocket. This one is for you, Lily. I'll keep the other in my room. If you have another nightmare or need anything at all in the night, just press this button and talk. I'll be there. Lily's eyes widened. Even if you're sleeping? Even if I'm sleeping, he confirmed. I promise I'll hear it. That night, after tucking the twins in, Ethan spoke with Eleanor. Thanks for talking with her last night, he said. What did you say to make her trust me? Eleanor smiled enigmatically. I just told her the truth, that you were once a frightened child too, that you've also had losses, and that maybe you needed her and Violet as much as they need you. Ethan looked at her, surprised. You really think that? You've changed these last few weeks, Ethan, Eleanor observed. You're more present, not just physically, but emotionally. It's like those girls woke up a part of you that's been asleep. He reflected on her words. It was true. He felt different. The numbers in his bank accounts, the corporate mergers, the headlines about his deals, all of it felt less significant now compared to Violet's smile or Lily's gradual trust. Later that night, while working in his office, the walkie-talkie on his desk crackled softly. Ethan? Lily's small, hesitant voice came through. Are you there? He grabbed the device immediately. I'm here, Lily. Is everything okay? There was a pause. I just wanted to make sure it worked. Ethan smiled at the little device. It works perfectly. I'm always here if you need me. Good night then, she said, her voice already more relaxed. Good night, Lily. Ethan placed the walkie-talkie on the table, a strange sense of joy filling him. It wasn't just a gadget or a way to ease nightmares. It was a symbol of trust, an invisible thread connecting him to the girl who, without realizing it, was slowly filling a void in his life he hadn't known existed. The next morning, Lily came, down for breakfast with the walkie-talkie clipped to the waistband of her pajamas. As though it were the most natural thing in the world, Ethan noticed but didn't comment, merely exchanging a knowing smile with her. It was a small step but a meaningful one, a growing bond between them like a delicate plant finally finding the sun after too long in the shadows. Autumn had given way to winter. Outside the Reynolds mansion, the gardens were covered by a thin layer of snow, turning the landscape into a postcard scene. Inside, the warmth of the heaters contrasted with the cold outside, creating that cozy atmosphere only truly inhabited homes possess. In the kitchen, Violet was drawing with crayons, her tongue stuck out in concentration. Lily read one of her new books, occasionally glancing at her sister and smiling. It was a scene of domestic normality that would have been unimaginable. 3 months earlier, Ethan watched them from the doorway, a hot coffee in his hands when his phone vibrated. It was Thomas, his attorney. I need to see you, said the voice on the other end. In person. It's about the twins. The serious tone made Ethan instantly alert. I'll be at the office in an hour. He hated leaving. Saturday mornings had become a ritual for the three of them. Late breakfast, then some activity together, usually something simple like a board game or a movie. But Thomas's tone left no room for delays. I have to go out for a few hours, he announced, coming over to the table. Work? Lily lifted her eyes from her book, her perceptive gaze catching something in Ethan's expression. Is everything okay? Sure, he replied, trying to sound casual. Thomas needs me to sign some documents. Can we go with you? Violet asked, holding up her drawing of what looked like a family of colorful unicorns. Not this time, sweetheart, Ethan said, ruffling Violet's hair. But I promise I'll be back in time for lunch. In the office, Thomas was waiting with a grave expression and a folder full of documents. The lawyer, normally calm and methodical, appeared restless. What happened? Ethan asked straight away. Thomas sighed, opening the folder. I got a notification from Child Protective Services. The temporary custody period is ending. What? How? Ethan felt his throat tighten. Mrs. Harper said we had time. Emergency. Temporary custody was never meant as a permanent fix, Thomas explained. It was an exceptional measure because you provided a safe environment when the girls needed it most. And I still am. Yes, but the system wants a definitive solution. Thomas slid a document across the table. They've identified a family interested in adopting both twins, a couple with prior adoption experience, stable, great references. Ethan picked up the paper, but the words blurred before his eyes. A family, someone taking Lily and Violet away. The thought felt like a punch to the gut. This can't happen, he whispered, his voice weaker than intended. There is an alternative, Thomas said. You could file for permanent guardianship or even adoption. The word hung between them, heavy with implications. Adoption? Ethan repeated, testing the word. It means you'd become their father. Yes, Thomas confirmed. Legally responsible in every way. Ethan stood abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, the city continued its usual pace, oblivious to the emotional storm in that office. I'm not sure I'm ready for that, Thomas. You'll need to decide. Soon, the lawyer replied. We have a week to respond. If we don't file the paperwork, they'll likely go to this other family. Ethan nodded absently, his mind a chaos of conflicting thoughts. Thanks, Thomas. I need to think. On the drive back, Ethan couldn't focus. Father. The word brought up images of his own dad, or rather the absence of him. A man who'd abandoned his pregnant mother, never once appearing to assume responsibility. And then there were the fathers in the foster homes, some kind, some not, but all eventually sending him back into the system. Could he do better? Could he be the kind of father Lily and Violet deserved? He arrived home later than planned, finding the twins in the garden with Eleanor, enjoying the fresh snow. Violet had built what vaguely resembled a snowman, while Lily made snow angels. Look, Ethan, Violet called when she saw him. I made a snow unicorn. Ethan forced a smile, walking over. It's the best snow unicorn I've ever seen. Lily, however, immediately sensed something was off. She got up, dusting snow from her clothes. What happened? She asked, her penetrating blue eyes locked on his face. Nothing to worry about now, Ethan replied. Let's have lunch, I'm starving. Over lunch, he tried to keep the conversation light, but his mind kept returning to Thomas's ultimatum. 1 week to decide if he wanted to be a father. 1 week to determine the future of 3 lives. That afternoon, he got a call from Mrs. Harper. Mr. Reynolds. I hope Thomas spoke with you, she said. Yes, he informed me about the situation. I'd like to schedule a visit tomorrow to discuss your options, Mrs. Harper continued, and also to talk about the Winters family. Winters? The couple interested in adopting Lily and Violet, she explained. They're wonderful people. He's a university professor, she's a pediatrician. They've already adopted 2 children, both well-adjusted and happy. Ethan felt a surge of irrational jealousy. Of course they'd be perfect. A professor and a doctor, probably with a dog and a house, with a white picket fence. Is 10 tomorrow okay? He asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Perfect. See you tomorrow, Mr. Reynolds. That night, after putting the twins to bed, Ethan stayed up in his office, staring into the fireplace. The last few months had been the happiest he could remember in years, maybe decades. The simple acts of reading Violet a bedtime story, discussing a book with Lily, or sharing a meal, these had brought a joy no business triumph had ever matched. And now he might lose it all. Still up? Came Eleanor's voice, surprising him. She rarely sought him out this late. Thinking, he replied. Eleanor entered carrying a tray of hot tea. Thomas called me, said you might need a talk. Ethan accepted the teacup gratefully. You always know when to show up. 30 years working for you gives me that kind of intuition, she replied, settling in the armchair opposite him. Want to talk about it? He told her about the ultimatum, about the other family, about having a week to decide. What do you intend to do? She asked finally. I don't know, Ethan admitted. I don't know if I can be what they need. And what do you think they need? The question caught him off guard. A father, someone who knows what they're doing, someone who won't screw it all up. Eleanor smiled gently. No parent knows what they're doing, Ethan. Everyone's improvising, hoping to do more right than wrong. But these winters seem perfect. Professor, pediatrician. Titles don't make parents, Eleanor observed. Lily and Violet don't need impressive resumes. They need someone who loves them for who they are. What if I don't know how? The vulnerability in the question startled even Ethan. You already are, Eleanor answered simply. When Violet has a nightmare, who stays up telling her stories until she sleeps again? When Lily struggles with the reading I started bringing, who patiently explains it to her? You're already their father, Ethan. The question is whether you want a piece of paper to say so. Her words weighed on him all night. Ethan barely slept, replaying the past months, the changes in the house, in his routine, in his heart. Morning came, and Mrs. Harper arrived promptly at 10 isag. She brought more documents and photos of the Winters family, an attractive couple in their 40s with 2 smiling children in a sunny backyard. They're Mark and Diana, Mrs. Harper explained. Mark teaches literature at the State University, and Diana works at a children's hospital. They live in a spacious house about 2 hours away in a nice neighborhood with great schools. Ethan looked at the photos, feeling a sense of dread. They seemed straight out of a life insurance commercial. How long would the adoption process take? He asked, hearing emotion creeping into his voice. For them? Relatively quick. They've done this before, have all necessary certifications. Mrs. Harper hesitated. If you decide it's best for the girls, we can transition in a month, maybe sooner. A month. 4 weeks and Lily and Violet would be out of his life. What if, Ethan began, struggling to form words, what if I wanted to adopt them? Mrs. Harper studied him for a moment. It would be a more complex process. You've never adopted, you're single, your work history suggests you have little free time. I've been cutting back, he argued, delegating responsibilities. That's good, but the court will consider other factors too. Mrs. Harper flipped through some documents. In your favor, you have financial resources, stability, and an existing bond with the children. Against you, your lack of previous experience with kids and your historically unpredictable schedule. Ethan nodded, taking it in. How long? 6 months to a year, probably, with continuous supervision during that period. Their conversation was interrupted by a small bump at the door. Violet burst in, followed by Lily trying to hold her back. Sorry, Lily said quickly. She slipped away when Eleanor answered the phone. Mrs. Harper smiled at the twins. Hello, Lily, Violet, how are you today? Good, Lily replied politely, while Violet approached the table, curious about the papers. What are those pictures? She asked, pointing to the Winters family photos. Ethan and Mrs. Harper exchanged tense looks. Before either could respond, Lily stepped closer and looked at the photos. Her sharp mind connected the dots instantly. Are these the people who want to take us away? She asked, her small but firm voice betraying a hint of dread. Lily, Ethan began. No one's decided anything yet. Are they going to separate us? Her voice trembled slightly. No, Mrs. Harper said firmly. Lily, I promised you and Violet would stay together, remember? That promise still stands. Sensing the tension, Violet moved closer to her sister. I don't want to go away. I want to stay with Ethan. The simple, direct statement hit Ethan like lightning. The reality struck him fully. This wasn't just about whether he felt ready to be a father. It was about 2 children who already saw him as family. No one is going anywhere today. Ethan said, kneeling to eye level with the twins. I promise we'll talk about this together. Okay. Lily nodded, her eyes showing more understanding than any 6-year-old should have. She took Violet's hand. Let's let the grown-ups talk. As the children left, a heavy silence filled the room. This complicates things, Mrs. Harper commented. On the contrary, Ethan replied. It simplifies them. After Mrs. Harper left, Ethan spent the rest of the day with the twins, trying to maintain a sense of normality while his mind raced. That evening, after Violet was asleep, he found Lily still awake, sitting at her bedroom window gazing at the stars. Can I sit with you? He asked. She nodded, shifting over to make room. They stared in silence at the night sky for a few moments. Are we really leaving? Lily finally asked. Ethan took a deep breath. That depends. On what? Partly on you, and partly on me. Lily looked at him with serious eyes. Do you want us to stay? That was the central question, wasn't it? Beneath all the doubts about his parenting ability, what did he truly want? Yes, he replied, surprised at the certainty in his own voice. I really want you to stay. Then why did that woman have pictures of another family? Ethan searched for the simplest explanation. Because for you two to stay here permanently, legally, I'd have to become your father. Not just someone caring for you temporarily, but your father forever. Lily processed this. And you don't want to be our dad? The question struck deep. It wasn't a matter of want, it was fear. Fear of failing, of not being enough, of repeating the mistakes others had made with him. I'm afraid I won't be good at it, he admitted. That I'll let you down? Lily thought for a moment. Violet spilled juice on your laptop last week and you didn't even yell at her. It was an accident, Ethan recalled. Dad yelled even if it was an accident, Lily said quietly. The simple comparison triggered a shift inside Ethan. The fear was still there, but something stronger, resolve, began to grow beside it. Lily, he said gently, holding her small hands, I want to try. I want to be your father and Violet's too if you'll have me. Even if you don't know how, she asked, echoing his own doubts. Even if I don't know how, he confirmed. We'll learn together. Lily gave a small but genuine smile. I think it would be nice to have you as a dad. Ethan felt his eyes grow moist. I think it would be the greatest honor of my life to be a dad to both of you. The final hearing date was approaching. After 6 months of social worker visits, psychological evaluations, background checks, and mountains of paperwork, the court date had arrived. In a few hours, a judge would decide whether Ethan would be legally recognized as Lily and Violet's father, or if they'd be placed with the Winters family, who remained interested in adopting them. Ethan adjusted his tie for the 3rd time, staring at himself in the mirror. He'd slept little the night before, mentally reviewing every argument Thomas had prepared. The lawyer was confident, but Ethan knew the system too well to share his optimism. He had been a child in legal limbo himself. He knew how quickly things could go wrong. It's almost time, Eleanor announced, appearing at his bedroom door. The girls are ready. Ethan nodded, following her downstairs. Violet was on the couch, uncomfortable in her little dress, swinging her legs that didn't quite reach the floor. Lily stood beside her wearing a light blue dress that highlighted her eyes. Her hair was arranged in neatly braided pigtails by Eleanor. You two look beautiful, Ethan said, trying to sound encouraging. Violet smiled, but Lily remained serious. In recent weeks, she had grown increasingly quiet, watchful. Ethan had noticed but attributed it to anxiety over the hearing. After all, he could barely sleep himself. Remember what we talked about, he said, kneeling in front of them. The judge may ask you some questions, but there are no right or wrong answers. Just tell the truth. What if he decides we can't stay? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan hesitated. He'd promised to always be honest with them, but now the truth felt too cruel. Let's think positively, he finally replied. Thomas says we have a strong case. Lily didn't look convinced. Her perceptive eyes noted the tension he was trying to mask. Time's up, Thomas said, entering the room. The car is waiting. The ride to the courthouse was silent. Sensing the tension, Violet was unusually quiet, clutching the small unicorn, plush she never left behind. Lily gazed out the window, her reflection showing an expression far older than her 6 years. At the courthouse, they were led to a waiting room. Mrs. Harper was already there, accompanied by a woman Ethan didn't recognize. Mr. Reynolds, Mrs. Harper greeted him. This is Dr. Chen, the court-appointed psychologist who will evaluate the children today. Ethan shook the woman's hand, trying to hide his surprise. I wasn't aware there would be another evaluation. It's standard procedure, Mrs. Harper explained. Just a brief conversation to ensure the children feel comfortable with the situation. While Dr. Chen spoke with Lily and Violet in a corner of the room, Ethan pulled Mrs. Harper aside. What's going on? Why another evaluation at the last minute? Mrs. Harper hesitated. Judge Montgomery is known for being cautious with single adopter cases, especially when other options are available. So you're saying the Winters are still in the picture? I'm saying the judge will consider all options for the children's best interest, Mrs. Harper replied diplomatically. Ethan looked over at Lily and Violet, now drawing pictures the psychologist had provided. The last 6 months played like a movie in his mind. The bakery, the shoe, the first night at the mansion, bedtime stories, nightmares conquered, small daily victories. The thought of losing all that was unbearable. Mr. Reynolds, Dr. Chen called. Could you give me a few minutes alone with the children? Ethan nodded reluctantly. Of course, I'll be right over there. He stepped away, joining Thomas at the other side of the room. How are we looking? He asked the lawyer. Thomas shrugged. As prepared as we can be. All documents are in order. Previous evaluations were positive. We have character witnesses ready to testify that you're suitable as a father, but Ethan recognized that tone. But Judge Montgomery is traditional. He prefers conventional families. A mother-father white picket fence. The Winters, Ethan muttered. They fit his ideal model, yes, Thomas confirmed. But it's not a lost cause. You do have the existing bond with the kids in your favor. Mrs. Harper's reports emphasize that. Their conversation was interrupted by the bailiff announcing that the hearing would begin in 10 minutes. Ethan went back to the twins, noticing that Lily looked even more tense. Everything okay? He asked, crouching beside her. Lily nodded without meeting his eyes. Yeah. Lily, look at me. He waited until her blue eyes met his. No matter what happens in there, I want you to know you two are the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'll never forget that. Something flickered across her face. Fear, perhaps, or comprehension. She glanced at Violet, then back at Ethan. Can we go to the bathroom first? She asked. Sure, Ethan replied. Eleanor can take you. I'll take Violet, Lily said quickly. We saw it when we came in. There was something odd about her insistence, but Ethan was too nervous to question it. Okay, but be quick. The hearing starts in a few minutes. Lily grabbed Violet's hand and the two left the room. Eleanor offered to accompany them, but Lily said they'd be fine. Ethan turned back to the final details with Thomas, trying to calm his nerves. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The bailiff appeared again. We're ready to start, he announced. Ethan looked around, suddenly realizing the twins hadn't returned. Lily and Violet aren't back yet. Eleanor immediately volunteered to check. She returned minutes later, pale-faced. They're not there, she said. I checked all the bathrooms on this floor. A cold wave ran down Ethan's spine. Maybe they got lost. This place is big. Yet as he said it, a terrible certainty began forming. Lily's expression when he spoke, as if he was saying goodbye. Her insistence they go alone. The backpack she carried, larger than necessary for a court hearing. They ran away, he said, the realization hitting him like a punch. The next hour was a blur of movement and panic. Court security was alerted. Mrs. Harper and Thomas coordinated searches of the building while Ethan rushed to the entrance, looking desperately among the crowds. But the large judicial complex was packed. 2 small children could easily slip out unnoticed. "We need to call the police," Mrs. Harper urged once it was clear the twins weren't in the building. "No," Ethan responded instinctively, his childhood experiences making him wary of the system. Police meant reports, meant treating them like runaways, possibly separating them once found. "I'll find them." Mr. Reynolds, with all due respect, 2 children alone in the city. "I know Lily," Ethan interrupted. "I know how she thinks." He turned to Eleanor. "Call the driver. I need to go to the bakery." "The bakery?" Thomas asked, confused. "That's where it all started," Ethan explained, already moving toward the exit. "Lily is clever. She has a plan, and I'd bet she starts with the place we first met." The ride to Harrington's bakery never felt so long. Ethan practically jumped from the car before it fully stopped, rushing inside. With a pounding heart, the same attendant from months ago recognized him. "Mr. Reynolds. What a coincidence. 2 little girls were here asking about you maybe half an hour ago." Relief and renewed worry washed over Ethan. A blonde pair of twins? What did they want? The one who did the talking asked if I remembered her, said she was looking for somewhere to stay with her sister. The young man looked uncomfortable. I told them they couldn't stay here, obviously. I suggested they try the church across the street. Ethan thanked him quickly and hurried over to the church in question. It was an old stone building with heavy wooden doors. Inside, the air was cool and silent, broken only by the echo of his hurried footsteps. "May I help you?" asked a middle-aged man, likely the pastor. "I'm looking for 2 children," Ethan said, trying to steady his breathing. "Identical twins, Lily and Violet, about 6 years old. Were they here today?" The pastor nodded slowly. "They were, yes." The one who spoke said they were waiting for their father. He studied Ethan curiously. "Is that you?" "Yes," Ethan said, without hesitation. "Where are they now?" "They left about 20 minutes ago. The girl mentioned something about a park they used to stay in." Ethan thanked him and ran back to the car. The park, of course. She was retracing their life on the streets, revisiting places she knew, places she felt safe before she met him. The park wasn't far, but every second felt like an eternity. When they finally arrived, Ethan jumped out and began frantically searching. It was large, with various playgrounds and wooded areas. Eleanor was the one who spotted them first. "There." She pointed to a distant corner near a big tree. Ethan ran as if his life depended on it. From a distance, he saw the 2 small figures sitting beneath the tree, Violet clutching her plush unicorn, Lily with her head bowed. "Lily, Violet," he shouted, unable to hide the relief in his voice. The twins looked up in unison. Violet was the first to react, her face lighting up with a smile. "Ethan!" she yelled, getting up and running toward him. Ethan dropped to his knees, catching Violet in his arms, holding her tight as though afraid she might disappear again. Over her shoulder he saw Lily approaching slowly, her face a mixture of relief and fear. "Lily," he said gently, extending one arm toward her while still hugging Violet. "Come here." She hesitated for a moment before running to him, tears finally escaping her tightly controlled eyes. Ethan embraced them both with all the strength he could muster without hurting them, feeling his own face grow wet. "Why did you run away?" he asked once he found his voice. "You scared me so much." Lily pulled back slightly, wiping her tears on her sleeve. "We thought they were going to take us away," she explained. "When you talked like you were saying goodbye and that new lady showed up." "Oh, Lily," Ethan sighed, finally understanding. "I wasn't saying goodbye, I was just nervous about the hearing." "But what if the judge says no?" Her voice trembled. "We heard Mrs. Harper talking about the other family. They sound perfect." Ethan held Lily's small shoulders, looking directly into her eyes. "Listen closely, Lily. No matter what happens in that courtroom, no matter what any judge decides, I will never abandon you. Ever." "Promise?" she asked, her eyes searching for any sign of doubt. I promise with all that I am, Ethan replied. You're my family now, and family never gives up on each other. Violet, still clinging to Ethan, looked up. So we can go back home? The simplicity of her question brought a smile to Ethan's face. Yes, Violet. But first we need to go back to the courthouse. We still have a hearing. Will they separate us because we ran away? Lily asked, fear returning to her eyes. No, Ethan assured her. I'll explain everything, but we have to be honest about what happened, okay? No more secrets. Lily nodded, looking both relieved and ashamed. Ethan lifted Violet in his arms, took Lily's hand firmly, and together they walked back to the car where Eleanor stood waiting, wearing a calm smile. Returning to the courthouse was tense. Mrs. Harper received them at the entrance, visibly relieved to see the twins safe but also worried about the implications of their disappearance. The judge is furious, she whispered to Ethan. He paused the session, but he made it clear this does not help your case. I'll explain everything, Ethan replied. It was a misunderstanding. Thomas appeared, shuffling his documents nervously. We're being called in. The judge wants everyone immediately. The courtroom looked bigger and more intimidating than Ethan remembered. At the front, behind an elevated desk, Judge Montgomery, an older man with gray hair and a stern expression, glared at them with obvious disapproval. Mr. Reynolds, he began, his deep voice echoing in the room. I'm extremely disappointed by today's events. Fleeing with minors under temporary custody. With all due respect, Your Honor, Ethan interrupted. I did not flee with the children. They ran away on their own and I found them. The judge frowned, glancing at Lily and Violet, who stood close by Ethan, looking small and frightened. Is that true, children? Did you run off by yourselves? Lily stepped forward, her chin lifted, despite the fear in her eyes. Yes, sir, it was my idea. I thought they were going to take us away from Ethan. And why did you think that? The judge asked, softening his tone slightly as he addressed the child. Because they always do, Lily answered simply, painfully. Whenever we start to like a place, someone decides we have to leave. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. The judge observed Lily for a long moment before sighing. All right, let's proceed with the hearing, he decided. Mr. Thomas, you may begin your argument. The next 2 hours were a parade of testimonies, reports, and legal questions. Eleanor spoke about the positive changes she'd witnessed in Ethan since the twins' arrival. Mrs. Harper presented her assessments, highlighting the strong bond they had formed. Dr. Chen described her brief conversation with Lily and Violet before they ran, noting they genuinely seemed attached to Ethan. Finally, a well-dressed couple was called forward, the Winters. Ethan saw them in person for the first time, the tall man with wire-rimmed glasses, the attractive woman with a kind smile. They looked like they belonged in an insurance commercial. Diana Winters spoke calmly about their prior adoption experiences, the bedroom they'd already prepared for Lily and Violet, and the excellent schools in their area. Mark explained how his flexible schedule as a professor would let him be present for the children. With each word, Ethan felt his heart sink. How could he compete with that? A stable, experienced couple with happy adopted kids already, against a workaholic billionaire who barely knew how to make breakfast without help. Judge Montgomery listened intently, making occasional notes. When the Winters finished, he looked down at his papers for a long time. Considering all I've heard today, he began, and the troubling events at the start of this hearing, I have serious reservations about granting adoption to Mr. Reynolds. Ethan felt as though he'd been punched in the gut. Beside him, Lily squeezed his hand tightly. The Winters present a traditional, stable family environment with proven experience in adoption, the judge continued, whereas Mr. Reynolds, despite his financial resources and evident affection for the children, has a history of excessive work and no experience with kids. Violet began to cry quietly. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, attempting to give comfort he himself didn't feel. Therefore, the judge went on, I am inclined to, may I speak? A small but firm voice cut through the room. Lilies. The judge paused, surprised at the interruption. Excuse me? Lily, Ethan whispered. We have to let the judge finish. But Lily was already standing, her intense blue eyes on the judge. Please, sir, just 1 minute. Judge Montgomery looked torn between irritation and curiosity. Finally, he nodded. Very well, young lady. What would you like to say? Lily took a deep breath, glancing quickly at Ethan before turning her gaze back to the judge. You said that family has experience, she began, her voice clear despite her nerves. They know how to be parents because they've done it before. That's correct, the judge acknowledged. But they don't know how to be parents to me and Violet, Lily continued. They don't know that Violet can only sleep if the hallway light is on, or that she's scared of thunder. They don't know I like to read unicorn books even though I'm older, or that I sometimes have nightmares about our dad never coming back. The courtroom was utterly silent, everyone riveted by the little speaker. Ethan didn't know any of that at first either, Lily admitted. But he learned. He stays up with me when I have nightmares. He bought a special nightlight for Violet's room. He never laughs when I ask questions, even if they're silly. She glanced briefly at the Winters. They seem nice, but we've had nice people before. People who promised to take care of us and then gave up when it got hard. Lily turned back. To the judge, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan is the only grown-up who never ever gave up on us. Not when we ran away, not when Violet spilled juice on his fancy laptop. Not when I got mad and said I hated him. A tear rolled down Lily's cheek, but she pushed on. Please, Your Honor, don't take us away from the only person who really wants us, no matter how hard it gets. The silence that followed Lily's words was profound. Ethan realized he was holding his breath. Violet was still, her wide eyes fixed on her sister. Judge Montgomery removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes in a tired gesture. When he looked at Lily again, his expression had changed. Thank you for sharing, Lily, he said kindly. You're very articulate for someone so young. He glanced at the papers before him, then at the Winters, and finally at Ethan. In all my years in family court, he began, I've learned that the hardest decisions rarely hinge on what's on paper alone. There's a human dimension no report can fully capture. He paused, looking directly at Ethan. Mr. Reynolds, when we began this hearing, I had doubts about your ability to provide the traditional environment I consider ideal for children. Ethan nodded, bracing for the worst. However, the judge continued, I am reminded today, by the eloquence of a 6-year-old, that family isn't only about traditional structures. It's about connection, commitment, and the willingness to persist even when it's difficult. Ethan's heart began to pound. The Winters, said the judge, turning to the couple, are clearly exceptional candidates who would offer a loving home. Yet I cannot ignore the bond already formed between these children and Mr. Reynolds, a bond that, as Lily eloquently stated, has been forged through adversity and built on trust. The judge settled back in his chair, his decision apparent. Therefore, after careful consideration, I grant Mr. Ethan Reynolds' petition for adoption. Lily and Violet Reynolds will be legally recognized as his children from this moment forward. The room spun around Ethan. Lily and Violet Reynolds, his daughters, legally, officially, forever. Your Honor, said Diana Winters, rising from her seat. Ethan braced himself for an objection, but what came next surprised everyone. We'd like to withdraw our petition, she said, her husband nodding beside her. We came here because we wanted to offer a home to kids who needed one, but it's clear Lily and Violet have already found theirs. The judge nodded, clearly approving of the gesture. So noted. I wish you all the best. With a final bang of his gavel, it was over. Ethan dropped to his knees, opening his arms, and Lily and Violet ran to him, all three converging in a tight embrace in the middle of the courtroom. Let's go home, Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Our home. The ride back was the opposite of the trip in, joyful, noisy, full of plans for the future. Violet chatted nonstop about painting her room with unicorns, while Lily discussed the possibility of getting a dog in earnest detail. Eleanor had gone home earlier to prepare a celebration. The dining room table, rarely used before the twins' arrival, was set with a cake and colorful decorations. "Welcome officially to the family," she said, her eyes shining with happiness. That night, after all the excitement when the children were finally in bed, Ethan visited each of them for their usual bedtime ritual. In Violet's room, he found her almost asleep, hugging her inseparable unicorn. "Good night, Violet," Ethan whispered, tucking the blankets around the small body. "Good night." Violet paused for a moment, then finished with a sleepy grin. "Dad?" The word washed over Ethan like a warm wave. Dad. So simple, so profound. He kissed the girl's forehead, his daughter's forehead, and slipped out quietly. In Lily's room, she sat in bed flipping through one of her favorite books. "Bedtime story?" Ethan offered, sitting beside her. Lily closed the book, looking at him seriously. "Do you think what I said really helped in front of the judge?" "Lily," Ethan replied with complete sincerity, "you changed everything. It was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." She smiled, proud but shy. "I just told the truth." "The most important truth," he agreed. "That we are a family." Lily nodded, lying down and pulling up the blanket. Ethan leaned in to kiss her forehead, but she surprised him by throwing her arms around his neck in a tight hug. "Good night, Dad," she whispered in his ear. Ethan held her for a moment, allowing the full weight of it to settle. "Good night, my daughter." Later, alone in his study, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he was a man whose worth could be measured by numbers, whose relationships were mostly transactional, whose life was organized around acquisitions and mergers. On his desk, where once there had been only spreadsheets and contracts, now lay colorful drawings, thank you notes from school, and a framed photo, Ethan, Lily, and Violet at a picnic in the park, all smiling in the golden evening light. He picked up the photo, tracing their faces with his fingers. How could he have known on that day at the bakery that a request for bread would change his life so completely? How could he have imagined finding the meaning he'd sought all his life, not in professional victories, but in the trusting eyes of 2 children? Ethan Reynolds, the ruthless billionaire who built an empire from nothing, finally understood what truly mattered. Not the amassed fortunes, the buildings bearing his name, or the power he wielded in financial circles. It was the privilege of hearing Violet call him Dad while drifting to sleep. It was the honor of earning Lily's hard-won trust. It was the chance to be the person these 2 souls needed him to be. Not perfect, not infallible, just present. Truly present. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. Instead of checking emails or stock prices, he went down to the kitchen and, with Eleanor's help, began making breakfast. "Pancakes?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Violet's favorite?" "Yes," Ethan confirmed with a smile, "and fresh fruit for Lily." When the twins came down, still in pajamas and with messy hair, they found the table set and Ethan waiting for them. "Good morning, Reynolds family," he said, flashing a wide grin. Lily and Violet exchanged glances before smiling back. They sat down, and for the first time, there was no rush, no fear the food would run out, no anxiety about what came next. There was only the present moment. 3 people whose paths had crossed by chance, or maybe by something more, finally finding one another. "More pancakes, Violet?" Ethan offered, holding the plate. "Yes, please, Dad," the girl replied, her eyes shining with happiness. "Lily, would you like to read that new book to us after breakfast?" Ethan asked. She nodded, smiling over her glass of orange juice. "Yes, Dad." The words still felt new, wonderful, like precious gifts each time they were spoken. Dad, daughters, family. After breakfast, as promised, they gathered in the living room. Lily read aloud from her new book about unicorns, occasionally helping Violet with the difficult words. Ethan simply watched them, marveling at how these 2 small beings had completely transformed his existence. "Dad, are you listening?" Lily asked, noticing his distraction. "Sorry, sweetheart," Ethan said. "I was just thinking about how lucky I am." Violet climbed onto his lap. "We're lucky too," she said with the simple wisdom of children. "We have you and Eleanor in this big house and no more sleeping outside. And we'll always be together," Lily added, more a statement than a question. "Right?" "Always," Ethan confirmed, pulling her into the embrace. "That's what families do." Later that afternoon, Thomas called with news about finalizing the adoption paperwork. As Ethan was speaking with him, he noticed Lily sitting quietly in the corner of his office, drawing something. "What are you working on?" he asked after ending the call. Lily approached, somewhat shyly, and handed him the paper. It was a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands in front of what looked like a large house. Lily, Violet, and Dad were labeled in careful handwriting. "It's for your office," she explained, "so when you're working, you can remember us." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "I could never forget you, Lily, not for a second." She hesitated, then asked the question that had clearly been on her mind. "Is our other dad ever coming back?" Ethan knelt to her level. "I don't know, sweetheart, but if he does, we'll figure it out together. Your memories of him are important, and I'll never try to replace that." "But you're our real dad now, right?" she pressed. "Yes," Ethan assured her. "In all the ways that matter." Lily nodded, satisfied. "I'm going to tell Violet we should call you Dad all the time now, not just sometimes." As she skipped out, Ethan carefully pinned the drawing to his wall, right next to his financial projections and company reports. The contrast couldn't have been more stark or more perfect. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Ethan sat with Eleanor on the back patio, watching the stars. "I never imagined this life," he admitted. "Not once in all my plans." Eleanor smiled knowingly. "The best things are rarely planned, Ethan. I'm going to step back from daily operations at the company," he said suddenly. "Thomas is drawing up the paperwork. I'll remain chairman but delegate most responsibilities to the executive team." "And what will Ethan Reynolds do with his time?" Eleanor asked, though she already knew the answer. "Be a father," he replied simply. "The best one I can be." The following weekend, they held a small party to celebrate the adoption becoming official. Thomas came, as did Mrs. Harper, and a few close colleagues whom Ethan trusted. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, and Eleanor outdid herself with a cake shaped like a castle. "Because we live in one," according to Violet. During the celebration, Ethan noticed Lily standing alone by the window, watching everyone with a thoughtful expression. "Everything okay?" he asked, joining her. "I was just thinking about Mom," she said softly. "I think she would be happy about today." "I'm sure she would," Ethan agreed. "She loved you both very much. Can we put her picture somewhere special, so we don't forget?" "Of course we can. We'll find the perfect spot together." Lily smiled up at him, the same smile that had first broken through his defenses months ago in the bakery. "You know what, Dad?" "What, sweetheart?" "I think maybe we're supposed to find each other." With those words, Lily rejoined the party, leaving Ethan to marvel at the wisdom that sometimes came from the most unexpected sources. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. The Reynolds family settled into routines that felt as natural as breathing. School drop-offs and pickups, weekend outings, bedtime stories, and Sunday pancakes became the anchors around which their lives revolved. Ethan Reynolds, once known only for his business acumen and ruthless acquisitions, was now equally recognized as the devoted father of twin girls who had changed not just his life, but who he was at his core. And every so often, when passing Harrington's bakery, he would pause and remember that cold autumn morning when 2 small girls had offered a worn shoe in exchange for bread, a simple transaction that had led to the greatest investment of his life, with returns beyond measure. Ethan Reynolds, Lily Reynolds, Violet Reynolds, a family in name, in heart, and in all the ways that truly mattered.